Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're plunging into a conversation that's, well, it's been around for centuries, hasn't it?
Absolutely. The whole interplay between atheism and Christianity. It's a big one.
Yeah, think of it like we're getting a chance to listen in on this really long, sometimes pretty intense, but lately, maybe more thoughtful discussion about belief, about not believing.
It's definitely evolved. I mean, you look back, and often Christian thinkers would just sort of dismiss atheistic ideas.
Right.
But more recently, say the last 50 years or so, there's been a real shift. Theologians from, all sorts of Christian traditions trying to genuinely get their heads around the challenges atheism raises.
So the goal now is more about, real dialogue, not just arguing.
Yeah, exactly. More fruitful dialogue, less confrontation. It's the hope, anyway.
Okay, good. Because that's what we're trying to do here, too. We're not picking sides or anything. Our goal is just to really dig into the arguments, understand the big questions being asked, maybe find some, surprising connections. It's about understanding, not adding fuel to the fire.
Agreed.
So let's start with some of the major criticisms that atheist thinkers have leveled against Christianity. Where should we begin? Maybe Ludwig Feuerbach?
Feuerbach, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really powerful idea. What if our whole concept of God isn't about some external being, but it's actually us, a projection of our best part?
Our best parts, like what?
Like our reason, our sense of freedom, our ability to love. Feuerbach basically said, we take these amazing human things, and instead of owning them, we project them onto this external God.
Ah, okay. So by doing that, we actually make ourselves smaller somehow.
That was his argument, yeah. He thought it led to human alienation. We focus on this perfect God out there and forget the potential within humanity. He saw a kind of opposition there.
Like admiring the reflection and forgetting the person.
Exactly. A really good way to put it. Focus on the perfect God hinders us recognizing our own human potential.
But what's the counter to that? Because it sounds compelling, but...
Well, the main pushback is, okay, just because we can project our desires onto something or imagine it doesn't automatically mean the real thing can't exist.
Right.
Think about it. You hope for a sunny day, you project that positive feeling, but the sun might still come out anyway. The act of projecting doesn't in itself disprove the existence of whatever you're projecting onto.
That makes sense. Our hopes and fears, we project them all the time, but the things we hope for or fear can still be real.
Right. And another point critics make is about Feuerbach's foundation, this idea of a fixed human essence, these perfect qualities we're supposedly projecting.
Is that essence even a real thing? Or just another idea?
Exactly. If that concept itself is a bit shaky, then his explanation for why we seem to long for something infinite, something beyond just us, well, starts to look less solid.
Yeah. And his solution, just get rid of religion and we'll all be better humans.
Pretty much. But that's criticized too. Does that just ignore a whole part of human experience? That sort of spiritual impulse many people feel.
And it seems to put all the blame on religion for alienation, overlooking, economic factors, social stuff.
Right. Which brings us neatly to Karl Marx.
Ah, opium of the people.
That's the famous line. So Marx took this idea of alienation, but he saw it differently. Not just personal projection, but rooted in society's structure.
How so?
He saw religion as this kind of comforting illusion, an illusory consciousness, he called it. It numbs the pain of real-world suffering, especially from economic inequality.
So instead of fixing the problems, it just makes you feel a bit better about them?
Kind of, yeah. Like a painkiller, like you said. It eases the symptom, the suffering, but doesn't touch the disease, the unfair system. Marx thought focusing on God and heaven distracted people from fighting injustice right here, right now.
So it's less about individual psychology and more about how society produces these ideas to maintain the status quo, keep people down.
Precisely. He went further, calling religion an ideology a product of the economic base, designed to keep that base intact.
And he thought it would just disappear.
Yeah, he predicted that once capitalism was gone, replaced by a truly equal communist society, religion would simply wither away. No need for the opium anymore.
Which, history didn't quite follow that script.
Not really, no.
So what are the main criticisms of Marx's view?
Well, first, like Feuerbach, his atheism was kind of a starting point, an assumption. He asserted God didn't exist and religion was just social, but didn't offer, proof for God's non-existence.
Okay, so both started from that place of disbelief.
Seems like it. And Marx's understanding of Christianity itself is often seen as pretty limited. He was mostly looking at its social role in 19th century Europe, how it seemed to prop up the bourgeoisie.
So he made big generalizations based on that specific time and place.
Yeah, critics say it's like judging the whole history and diversity of Christianity based on one particular version, like judging an ocean by looking at a puddle, as you put it earlier.
Right. And his big prediction about it vanishing under communism.
Totally wrong. I mean, religion persisted, sometimes went underground, but it showed up in many communist states. It suggests religion fills needs that go beyond just economics.
Something deeper, maybe. Okay, let's shift to Friedrich Nietzsche. God is dead. That's a heavy one. What was driving his critique?
Nietzsche's core idea was that Christian values were fundamentally anti-life. He thought Christianity fostered a will to nothingness.
Will to nothingness.
Yeah, by focusing on these, what he saw as fictitious realities God, heaven, it devalued this life, our earthly existence, our passions, our instincts. He saw it as life-denying.
So Christianity points us away from the messy, vital reality of being alive now towards some imagined future.
That was his take. Concepts like sin, guilt, redemption, he saw them as tools to suppress our natural life force, our will to power. For Nietzsche, real human growth, the path to what he called the Superman or Overman, could only begin after we recognize this death of God. Then we could reevaluate all values, creating new ones that affirmed life in all its fullness.
Okay, creating our own values, celebrating strength, earthiness. But how did he get to God is dead? Was that like a logical proof for him?
Not exactly a proof. Like the others, his atheism was more of a starting point. He saw the concept of God as a human invention, born from psychological needs for order, meaning God is dead, was partly a sociological observation. He saw religious belief declining in modern culture.
So less an argument against existence, more an observation about society changing, and a call for what comes next.
Pretty much, yeah. And a philosophical statement about the consequences.
But his view of Christianity as entirely life-denying, isn't that a bit too simple?
That's a major criticism.
Yeah.
He linked it heavily to Platonic dualism, spirit good, body bad. But Christian thought is way more complex than that. Many traditions emphasize the goodness of creation, the incarnation, God becoming flesh. It's not all world-denying.
So he kind of painted with a very broad brush.
You could say that. His picture didn't capture all the nuances. And his alternative, the Superman, well, it raises questions too. Does focusing so much on individual power fully account for our need for connection, community, dealing with vulnerability?
Yeah, it sounds very individualistic. Okay, let's bring in Sigmund Freud. Psychoanalysis and religion. What was his angle?
Freud basically offered a psychological explanation. He suggested belief in God is essentially projecting our childhood father figure onto the cosmos.
The ultimate father figure.
Kind of. He connected it to the Oedipus complex, feelings of guilt. We create this powerful, protecting God to soothe our anxieties and fulfill unmet needs from childhood. Ideally, he thought maturity meant outgrowing this need.
So God as a sort of cosmic security blanket, and religion as a collective neurosis we should move past.
That's a good way to sum it up, yeah. He saw it as infantilizing, holding back psychological maturity and even societal progress because it clashed with science. It was wish fulfillment, an illusion stopping us from facing reality rationally.
An emotional crutch, basically. But what are the counter-arguments there?
Well, again, Freud's atheism was his starting point, and his quite negative view of religion was probably shaped by the very scientific secular era he lived in. Could be bias.
The spirit of the times influencing the analysis.
Likely. Plus, some of his specific theories about religion's origins, like in his book Totem and Taboo, relied on anthropological ideas that are now, well, largely discredited.
Okay, so the foundations weren't entirely solid.
And critics also say he stretched his psychoanalytic framework too far, trying to explain everything about religion psychologically. Religion's got social, cultural, philosophical sides too, right?
Right, it's complex.
And his idea that science alone is the path to fulfillment. Maybe that overlooks other essential human things, like finding meaning or that sense of transcendence.
Okay. Let's move to someone more contemporary, the novelist José Saramago. How did his work critique God and Christianity?
Saramago used storytelling, really powerful narrative. He often depicted God not as a being, but as an idea humans created, an idea that then sort of takes over and devalues actual human life.
So less philosophy, more using fiction to explore that atheistic view. painting God's influence as harmful.
Exactly. He was critical of Christianity's focus on the afterlife, its perceived repression of the body, its seeming embrace of suffering, and how it's sometimes been used to justify injustice.
And his novel, The Gospel According to Jesus Christ, that was pretty controversial, wasn't it?
Very. He presented this really provocative take where Jesus' own life and freedom gets sort of supplanted by this idea of God. Jesus' death becomes a sacrifice to a non-existent being in his telling.
Wow. That implies the whole foundation is kind of a mistake. How do we engage with that kind of literary critique, though?
Well, it's vital to remember his starting point is the assertion that God is just a human idea. That's the premise. But just because our understanding is human doesn't automatically mean there's no reality beyond it.
Right.
And his view of God as only dominating isn't the whole picture within Christian thought either. There are many other conceptions. His specific portrayal of Jesus and God's relationship is also one artistic interpretation, not necessarily reflecting mainstream theology's view of, say, an intimate, loving connection.
Got it. It's a specific fictional lens. Now, Michel Onfray, he sounds like he had a particularly strong take.
Oh yeah, Onfray was forceful. He saw monotheistic religions, especially Christianity, as basically pathological, driven by a death drive, he said.
Death drive, yeah.
Yeah. He proposed this atheology to sort of deconstruct and dismantle these religions, aiming to build a new ethics based purely on affirming life, rejecting anything supernatural. He argued that basically everything in monotheism is anti-human.
Everything. Wow. And he dismissed Jesus entirely.
Pretty much. Called him a conceptual character, denied his historical basis. Onfray's approach was very aggressive, aimed at eradicating religious influence.
That is a very strong stance. What's the pushback against his atheology?
Well, one big criticism is that he often comes across with the same kind of intolerance he accuses religions of having, kind of mirrors it.
Interesting.
And his goal of completely wiping out religion through, like, intellectual argument, many see that as naive, maybe even a bit authoritarian. Plus, denying Jesus existed historically just ignores a massive amount of evidence historians generally accept.
Yeah, that seems problematic. It sounds like his passion might actually get in the way of a more useful discussion.
Perhaps. Okay, finally, let's touch on Richard Dawkins, a very prominent voice today. What's his main argument?
Dawkins really focuses on science. He argues that the idea of a personal, intelligent creator God is just a delusion, that it's flatly contradicted by science, especially evolution.
Right, the intelligent designer idea is highly improbable, in his view, given what science tells us.
He also uses that idea of faith as a kind of mental virus, doesn't he? Or a meme.
Exactly, a cultural idea that spreads not because it's true or good, but just because it's good at replicating itself. He sees it as actually harmful to human progress, leading to irrationality, hindering science.
So, for Dawkins, it's not just wrong, it's actively bad, like a mind parasite. What are the counters to that?
Well, a common one is that the God Dawkins argues against is often a very simplified, almost cartoonish version of what many theologians or believers actually mean by God. It's sometimes called the straw man argument.
Like arguing against all music by criticizing a nursery rhyme.
Something like that, yeah. Also, the scientific consensus on evolution doesn't necessarily automatically rule out a creator from many theological viewpoints. Lots of believers integrate evolution and faith.
The idea that science and religion have to be in conflict, that's debatable.
Absolutely. Many scientists are religious. It's an overstatement to say they're totally opposed. And just dismissing all religion as a harmful meme ignores the positive social, ethical, personal roles it plays for millions. It's a huge generalization.
Okay, so hearing all these critiques, themes definitely emerge. Projection, alienation, God as a human construct, but also lots of counterpoints and nuances.
Absolutely. And even if these critiques start from atheism or maybe a limited view of Christianity sometimes, they raise really important questions. They challenge Christian faith to look hard at itself.
Right. So let's pivot to that. What are these key challenges, these points of interpellation, as the material calls them, that atheism brings to Christianity?
Okay, well, one really fundamental one is the constant danger of creating idols. Right? Making distorted images of God based on our own limits and biases, and then mistaking those images for the real thing.
It's a call for humility then, recognizing our concepts are never the full picture.
Exactly. Acknowledging the infinite is always beyond our complete grasp. Another huge point is facing the fact that sometimes the image of God Christianity has presented has been harmful. It's led to alienation, guilt, inadequacy. Feuerbach, Marx, Freud, Saramago all hit on this in different ways.
No.
So Christian communities have to constantly ask, how are our teachings actually affecting people's sense of worth and well-being?
The way we talk about God has real consequences. It can free people or crush them.
Precisely. Then there's the accusation, especially strong from Nietzsche, that faith can devalue this life, our bodies, our relationships, history itself, in favor of just focusing on God and the afterlife.
So Christianity needs to push back against any tendency to split the spiritual from the material, to see the world as just bad or temporary.
Yeah, overcome that dualism, embrace the goodness of creation, the importance of being engaged here. And Marx's critique is a constant reminder. Religious institutions and beliefs can be used to prop up injustice, to serve interests that hurt people.
So faith communities need to constantly check themselves. Are they really working for justice? Living out the social implications of their beliefs?
Definitely. A continuous, honest self-examination is needed. And all these critiques really push faith back towards the God revealed in Jesus. A God who embraced humanity fully, showed compassion, healed, ate with outcasts, challenged injustice.
So any version of God that diminishes people is kind of contrary to Jesus himself.
You could argue that, yes.
Yeah.
It brings us back to that core story of God becoming human. And then there's the tough history, the violence, the intolerance done in Christianity's name. Saramago and others point to this. It demands an ongoing commitment to respect, dialogue, and working actively for peace and justice.
A hard truth to face. Owning the times when actions didn't match the message of love.
And maybe rethinking how we understand Jesus' death. Moving beyond just seeing it as like a legal transaction to pay off sin, a point Saramago subtly raises.
Finding deeper meaning in the cross.
Perhaps, yeah. More nuanced understandings. And finally, in our scientific age, especially with evolution being so central, like Dawkins and Onfray highlight theology needs to talk with science, not just ignore it or fight it.
And Christians need to move past maybe simplistic, literal readings of the Bible, using good interpretation, understanding context.
Exactly, good hermeneutics.
Yeah.
Engage honestly with modern knowledge, don't just retreat. So yeah, these are big challenges.
They really are. But then, how does Christian faith, at its core, actually affirm the human, despite all these critiques?
Well, that's the other side, isn't it? Because despite the valid points raised, the heart of Christian faith, especially seen in Jesus, is profoundly affirming of human dignity and potential. Theology talks about this deep, respectful relationship between God and humanity, clearest in Jesus.
Can you give some examples? How did Jesus' life show that affirmation?
Oh, definitely. Look at his actions. His miracles weren't just power trips. They were about healing, restoring people, feeding the hungry, signs of life, abundant life.
Right.
His whole message about the kingdom of God, that's a vision for a world of justice, peace, where everyone flourishes, especially the marginalized.
Yeah.
He actively fought oppressive systems, included the excluded, called for radical love and forgiveness.
So his actions were just fundamentally rooted in valuing people, in trying to ease suffering.
Absolutely. The experience of God he lived didn't make him withdraw. It fueled his compassion, pushed him to action. And the resurrection, the cornerstone belief that's seen as the ultimate yes to life, right? Overcoming death, injustice. It's like an invitation, as some theologians put it, to take down from the cross the crucified peoples. Work for liberation.
So living out the faith means being called to be more human, following Jesus' lead.
That's the idea.
Yeah.
But how does that happen concretely today? How can faith actually foster this humanization?
Yeah, practically speaking.
Well, one way is focusing on developing the whole person. Not just the spiritual side, but intellectual, emotional, social dimensions too. Integral development.
So it's more than just church on Sunday. It's about engaging our whole selves, our relationships, our communities.
Exactly. Second, constantly bringing the historical Jesus back into teaching and preaching, not just as a distant figure to worship, but as a real guide for how to live a fully human life centered on love and justice.
Making him relatable, a model for daily life.
Third, emphasizing God's love and forgiveness, that experience of grace, rather than focusing only on sin and guilt. Acknowledging we mess up is important, sure, but the core message is redemption.
Shifting from judgment to grace and renewal.
Yeah. And finally, always being willing to rethink and re-articulate core Christian beliefs in ways that connect with today's worldviews, today's knowledge, while staying true to that fundamental message of God as love.
Keeping the core message alive and relevant, basically. Okay. So putting it all together, how might this Christian idea of humanization compare with, say, atheist humanism?
Well, some would argue Christian humanization offers a more, maybe, integral vision because it includes that spiritual or transcendent dimension.
Yeah.
The relationship with God is part of being fully human. It's not just about the material or social.
It adds that search for meaning beyond the physical.
Right. And because it's rooted in following Jesus' example, it offers a path to personal transformation that can start right now through faith and practice. Whereas some atheist humanisms might put more emphasis on needing broader social or political changes first.
So a more immediate personal path, potentially.
Potentially, yeah. And some theologians even suggest that Christianity, with its emphasis on love, compassion, dignity for everyone, could actually enrich atheist humanism. But, that requires openness from both sides for dialogue.
Makes sense. Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive, what are the main things we've sort of pulled out from this whole conversation?
Well, we've definitely seen that atheist thinkers, from Feuerbach right through to Dawkins, they've raised some really profound, often tough critiques of Christianity, often focused on God being a human projection leading to alienation, diminishing human potential.
Right, and those critiques are important points for reflection for Christians, pushing faith to avoid becoming rigid, to fight injustice, engage with modern knowledge.
Exactly. But we've also seen how, at its heart, Christian faith, especially through Jesus, offers this really powerful affirmation of the human. Jesus' life itself is about human flourishing, and Christian practices, when they're lived out authentically, can help foster that nurturing the whole person, following Jesus, focusing on love, speaking to today's world.
So it seems like this whole ongoing conversation between atheism and Christianity, if it's done respectfully and honestly, it could actually be really valuable for both.
I think so, yeah. It forces both sides to really examine their core beliefs and maybe helps everyone get a deeper understanding of what it means to be human and how we all try to make sense of things, whether we believe or don't believe. It's a complex world.
That's a really insightful way to look at it. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. And for you listening, we hope you continue your own thinking about these huge questions, faith, reason, and what being human is all about.